this is Mrs. Lorenzo, and in this picture, it is also our family dog. His name is Soho. Now you're probably wondering, why does Miss Lorenzo have her dog in a picture? Well, today I am going to share with you artists and the way they create texture, and a lot of the pictures have animals in them. So the first thing I want you to notice in this picture is Soho's fur. Around his face, the fur is very short and it's very smooth. And then around his chest and his body, the fur becomes longer and fluffier. That's called texture. So we'll learn all about that today and how artists recreate it. So if you haven't guessed, yes, we are still covering the elements of art, and today's subject is texture. To review, the elements of art is the language of art. It's how we describe and create art. So far, we have covered lines, shapes, and color, and how artists use them. Texture is how a surface of something feels or looks. Like the softness of flowers, or a hard, rough surface of rocks, or the flow of a river, or the grittiness of the sand. And texture comes with a fluffy teddy bear. And this sculpture of a horse has a lot of different textures. It's made from clay, which is wet, gritty, smooth, and rough. Now that we've explored what texture is and how it's all around us, let's see how artists recreate that texture in their artwork. Today we'll compare two artists. They have one thing very similar. They are both authors and illustrators. Let's get started. This is author-illustrator Eric Carle. He is most famous for his book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Since we are talking about texture today, look along the top of the caterpillar. Do you see those tiny little lines? Repetition, over and over again, the same thing. The tiny little lines are showing the fuzz of the caterpillar. This is one way that artists create texture. So Eric Carle has created many books. So we'll take a look at a few. Did you also know that he has his own museum? And it's in Amherst, Massachusetts. Eric Carle not only does the illustrations, the pictures for all his books, but he also writes the stories. Many of his books and illustrations are about animals. Today we're studying texture. I want you to look closely at the animals' textures. Notice the shapes that Eric Carle uses to create his animals. Then he adds lines and color, and as he puts it all together, he comes out with some beautiful textures of fur. And look at this colorful seahorse. Eric Carle uses simple shapes again and adds lines and blotches of color to give you the scales of the seahorse. If you'd like to learn more about Eric Carle and his artwork and books, you can visit the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art, or go to his website, eric-carle.com. This is artist Jerry Pinkney. He is an illustrator. You may recognize some of his illustrations in these books. Notice all the texture. in the fur of the lion. And in his book, A Home in the Barn, notice all the different ways he creates texture of fur and feathers and animal skin and hay. And in this illustration, you can see the softness of the fur for the field mice and the fence posts, the roughness of the aged wood. And in this illustration of the tortoise and the hare, notice the texture of the scales of the turtle and the hardness of the shell versus the fur of the rabbit. If you'd like to learn more about Jerry Pinkney and his artwork and books, then go to jerrypinkneystudio.com. Now let's compare the two artists' styles and how they use shapes, lines, color, and create texture. So this first illustration is by Eric Carle. Notice the simple shapes he uses to create the face and all the texture of the fur and the mane of the lion. He uses a technique called collage. Collage uses many different types of materials. Here he uses painted papers and then he cuts out the shapes and lays them on top of each other. He adds details with crayons, markers, colored pencils, all kinds of things. This technique is called collage. As the pictures change, notice the pictures side by side. See if you can notice the difference. And here's Jerry Pinkney's illustration of a lion as well. Same animal, very different styles. He uses watercolor and colored pencils. As you can see, he creates texture as well. His is a little more detailed. Colors are very realistic, whereas Eric Carle's were very bright and bold. Very different styles, both very successful. This goes to show that artists create texture in so many different ways. There's just not one way to do it. Let's compare again. Here's A Red Fox by Eric Carle. Simple shapes, bold colors, beautiful lines, lots of texture. And here's Jerry Pinkney's fox. Once again, beautiful lines, great shapes, lots of texture, beautiful colors. Remember, his colors are more realistic. His drawing is more realistic, whereas Eric Carle's is more abstract with simpler shapes, creating a simplistic picture. Now it's time to draw. For today's art materials, you will need a pencil and a white piece of paper. So you're going to hold your paper vertical. That means the tall way. You're going to draw a line down the center of the paper, creating two columns. Each one will have 4 squares in it, or rectangles. You can fold your paper if that's easier for you, or you can use a ruler, whatever works for you. So here's my work in progress. At the top of the paper, I started down in the corner and angled up these wavy lines. On the right side of the paper, I used strictly straight lines. Well, I didn't use a ruler, but they're close to straight. Vertical and horizontal. The ones that are vertical are wider than the ones that are going horizontal, the ones that go side to side. And then this one, the third one, is a totally different look of a texture. This one is created with smaller lines crossing over each other. It's called cross-hatching. For this next block, what I'm going to do is demonstrate in fast motion because it's a little more complicated than the others. I'm doing a feathered look. Since we've been talking about animals, I thought I would throw this one in. It's the texture of feathers. But notice they're all just lines, just like the other three drawings. Lines. Repeating the same thing over and over again. Some lines are closer together, some are further apart. Some are in the same direction, some are not. Some are curved, some are straight. It's the repeating of all the lines that's creating the texture. So here are my first 4 textures, all very different, but they're all just done with pencil, black and white. I'm going to fast forward the last 4. I want you to notice how different they all are. So when you're creating your own texture in each of your blocks, think about where you start the patterns. Think of where your lines will all begin. The one you're watching right now started in the center and went outward. And this one starts in the center as well. Notice they just go round and round. It's one continuous line going in a circle, getting bigger and bigger. And then once that's done, then I come in with this scalloped line going all along inside. It almost gives a snake-like appearance. Just trying something different. Now remember, you can copy any of mine or create your own designs, your own type of texture. And the next one is going to be created in the center again and using half circles. The half circles are always going to overlap each other, and as they're overlapping each other, they're getting bigger and bigger. You could also think of it as a scallop line that's going around and around. It's when you look at it completed, it looks almost like a flower. And here in the last one, this is the 3rd time I'm using that same line, the scalloped line, or some people call it a wavy line. But because I'm applying it differently each time, it creates a different look. This time, I want it to look like scales, either scales on a fish or scales on a snake, but some type of skin or scales. So here you have it, 8 different types of texture, all created with simple lines. It's time for you to create your own textures. You can copy mine or come up with your own idea. Here are a few more examples. If you have extra time today, add color. You'll be amazed at how color changes the look of the texture. Don't forget to take a picture and send it to me. Have a great day.